Behold, the art of Cameron Forsley. Humane, crass, observant, delightful to some, offensive to others, but always uniquely his own. Cameron lives in Santa Fe these days, but when I first met him, we were participating in the Thursday night readings, outdoors, on the corner of 16th and Mission in San Francisco. It was and is a hub for poets, MCs, folk singers, really any kind of performing artist. But when Cameron arrived, the corner found one of its first dedicated visual artists. We all put him to work, illustrating our chapbooks, concert posters, and album covers, which Cameron gladly supplied, alongside his own prodigious output of zines, comics, and collaborations with his brother, the writer Christopher Forsley. Around this same time, the chalk artist, Nick Larson, arrived on the scene and has provided geometric mandalas every week ever since to set the space for whatever performances will emerge. At some point, Cameron dove deeply into the world of tattoos and landed an apprenticeship at DC Tattoos in Daly City. Naturally, all kinds of people from the 16th and Mission scene lined up to get some of Cameron's ink under their skin. I'm proud to have one of his early tattoos on my right shoulder. Enough preamble, though. Cameron tells his story better than I can, so let's pass the mic to him.
One of them's in Phoenix, but they all live in Phoenix still.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
That's where you originate, isn't it? Phoenix.
Kinda. I mean, SF's my main place that I was at the longest in my whole adult life. So I always like rep SF. That's like my main. San Francisco is my spot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
But I was born in Massachusetts. My dad was in the Navy on the submarine, so I was born in Massachusetts, lived in South Carolina and Maine. Then when I was a kid, we moved to Phoenix. So from my teenage years and stuff, it was in Phoenix. Mm-hmm. Growing up, skating in the desert, roasting in 120 something degrees.
You went to art school down there too, didn't you?
Yeah, when I was in high school, I drew a political cartoon that like won me a scholarship to Art Institute of Phoenix. So I went to Art Institute of Phoenix, like the AI, the red one, and then it was because I won first place in this contest, like a national contest. So I got just like $5,000 for it. So that sent me there, or got me going there, and I was in game art and design there. But I'm not big on computers, and it's not my thing. I like hand done stuff. So when I was there, it's a very technical type of place. So I always became like the guy, can I just draw the concept art for you guys? And then we would have a group and I would be like, can I just draw the stuff? And then, so I kind of always leaned that way. You know what I mean? So, yep. And then after Art Institute, I went and hung out in the Phoenix downtown First Friday area for a couple of years. And then that evolved, the gallery scene evolved into flyers. And then that evolved into like zines and comics, and then tattooing. So that's pretty much mostly the direction I went, you know.
Mm-hmm. And when I first met you in San Fran, I want to say that was 2009.
Okay, yeah.
And you were making these prints that had an epic amount of detail.
Yeah.
In them, kind of storytelling in one panel.
That's what led into me doing. My first zine I put out was in 2003. Like printed and put out, and then I've been drawing comics since a little kid, like I found, you know what I mean? But the first zine was in 2003, and then I put out the first comics in like 2009, like 16th and Mission comic. But before that, it was like I would do illustrations and flyers and stuff like that, like one single images, and then it covers and stuff, and you know, album covers and stuff, and then it led into then I started actually focusing on comics themselves.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
And you said 16th and Mission Comics edition 1 was 2009.
Yeah, so 16th Mission number 1, 2009. That was the first actual comic book, mini comic I put out. Was that one. Mm-hmm. And issue 1, yeah.
I remember you appearing at 16th and Mission. I was there weekly at that point. And I feel like maybe you came for a week or two and just hung and watched.
Yeah.
And then the way I remember it is that you came back like on the third week with edition 1 of 16th and Mission Comics, and it said by Cameron Forsley, the 16th and Mission artist. And what was cool about that is that none of our crew at that point were visual artists.
Yeah.
We were poets and performing artists. And so it was brilliant that you showed up and said, I'll illustrate for all of you.
Yeah, thanks, bud. I was drawn to that scene. That was cool because that 16th Mission and the open mic scene and you guys, that was my introduction to like a creative collective out in San Francisco.
We needed you.
And I was like, I somehow I was like, oh, these guys need a visual representation of this. So then I kind of like came up with that and started doing the flyers and the covers and illustrations for everyone and stuff like that. So that was cool, man. And that actually got me knowing a lot of people out there and broke me into San Francisco in a creative way, you know. So I was super happy to meet that scene and everyone. I'm grateful for that because that led me to even where I'm at now. That was like getting published and the 7th Tangent, Brandon, Charlie, and everyone, and teaming up with you guys. That was big. I mean,
yes,
that was cool.
Yes, and you did the wine label for Andrew.
Yeah, those. And then then it kept. I knew it would evolve in that scene, and then like there was 2 documentaries made off of that corner in that scene, and then it went into, and then we had like the location was like Viracocha. When that was created, it became like now we have an actual location other than the street corner because
sure,
16th Mission is wild.
Yeah, do you want to explain what 16th and Mission Gathering was for anybody who doesn't know?
Okay, yeah, 16th and Mission, that corner.
What it is, sorry.
Yeah, it was pretty much a creative collective of performers, poets, musicians, writers, and spokesmen and different things. And from like 9 p.m. to like midnight, or 8 p.m. to midnight, and sometimes later, it was just like people would just jump up there in the circle that Chalk Nick used to draw, and they would just perform their art, whatever it was, and it could be anything. And then people would just sit around, and we would, everyone would be just all collectively doing their art, Mm-hmm. And then Nick started doing the chalk circle to make it. It grew from like the candles that Charlie set up, and then it grew into Nick doing the chalk design, chalk artist doing the design every week to. This is where it's at. But the thing is, people should know about that corner. That corner is a wild corner.
Yes.
And it's a very hectic, wild corner, which makes it even more crazy and more magical because you never know what's going to happen there.
Yes. Too. And it deserves respect.
Yeah, for sure.
For how everyone else lives there for the rest of the week.
Yeah. You can't like, and things would happen, crazy things, and everyone was in shock, but it's, I mean, that's just what's going to happen there. It's like, watch where you're at, I mean?
I remember Justin Scales, the comedian, being hit in the face with a ham sandwich.
Oh, man.
Famously.
Guys, he had to go and run up on top and hide on top of the taco truck because dudes were coming for him. And then they dumped like the whole trash can in the middle of the circle. All the garbage that's so fucking nasty shit that you don't want to touch, But things would pop off. There were people getting fights, or people would, I mean, that corner's wild. There's like gunshots going off and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like a wild corner.
Yes.
But it was cool because that was perfect. Everything was perfect. It was all supposed to be. It was all supposed to be like that, and that's where the creativity was at. So everything grew from there. And a lot of creative people that we all met there. We all went in different directions and stuff, and they're still there every corner. I mean, they're always there rocking. So some of the guys, I give them so much credit, like Brandon and Charlie and those guys.
Yes, we're talking about Charlie Getter and Brandon Loberg.
Still rocking, holding it down, man.
Charlie is sort of our pappy.
So true to it.
Who helps to keep that circle kind and welcoming, and he keeps it brilliant with his poetry. And then Brandon Loberg, who started the 7th Tangent publishing company.
Talented guys, man. Great guys.
And you did a great many covers for 7th Tangent. For some of Charlie's books, and for maybe, did you do some of the Sparkle and Blink covers?
Yeah. I started off, I started doing, they had the 7th Tangent books, 16 the Mission books, and I started doing the covers and then the illustrations within them for like a bunch, maybe 5 or 6 of them, different ones, or maybe a couple more or less. But like there was a lot of them. There's like a set. I got a set of them too. Like I'm missing some, but I keep all that in order, you know. But yeah, that was when I started doing. I started off, the first intro there was, I did a flyer for 16th Mission. I just said, boom, this is the spot. And that was set it off. And then I started teaming up doing illustrations for those books. And it was cool, man. It was so dope because I love books. That's one of my biggest things is books. And teaming up with those guys and Brandon and Charlie and making books and like hand binding books. And then they published 16th Mission comics for me off of that also through Seven Tangent and Bums of the Bay, me and my brother's book.
Yes.
And we did like a limited edition, and we hand bind it just like those Seven Tangent ones.
Yes.
It was amazing. We would do jam nights at Charlie's house and all fold them together. Yeah, man.
Let me put this thing on a tripod and then I'm going to ask you about
yeah.
Bums of the Bay because I remember that book so well. Hang on one second.
No
Let me pause it. Do you dig Harmon Korman's
Werner Herzog, right?
Yeah, Werner Herzog.
Werner Herzog.
Yes.
Yeah, he was a big on that too. That dog. They call it dogma style when you have to hold it the whole time. Yeah.
It kind of introduces an element of stamina for the filmmaker.
yeah. He's a wild man, you know, that guy.
And his voiceovers are so recognizable.
Yeah. He's like
Timothy Treadwell, who is familiar with these grizzly bears.
Hell yeah.
Shit. Well, okay, so you were talking about Bums of the Bay, which you made as a collaboration with your brother, Christopher.
Yeah. So Chris, he wrote the whole thing, and I illustrated it. And actually, we did it reverse. Instead of like me illustrating off of his writing, which we've done many times, that book was, I would draw these, and that was way back when I was working at Home Depot, and I would draw these things on my lunch break, like all these things, and I would draw like a homeless guy, like a character, and then I would draw him, and then I would show my brother, and he would write a story based on the drawing, so it was like opposite.
Yes.
And then so he would come up with these different just stories about how they ended up on the streets and stuff like that. And it was on. Some people thought it was real, you know what I mean? And they were like, "This really," but I'm like, "Have you read it? Some of it's so crazy. It's never like that can't happen." You know what I mean? But it was so linked to reality that you didn't know, and some of it was based in reality, and some of it was not. And also the guys I drew, some of them were real people because I would take photos and like give them something and be like, "Hey, can I take your photo?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, cool." And I'd be like, "Cool." And then I would draw it off the photo. So they was based in reality too, you know what I mean? But that book, people like that book. And that was actually before I started going deep into comics, underground comics. That was like the book we made right before that, which was like not a comic, but a zine. It's actually pretty much a book or a zine, which is like an illustration and then a one-page writing and then an illustration, one-page writing, you know?
Yes. And both aspects are so striking in that book. And the writing just takes off on these flights of narrative fancy.
Yeah, crazy, man.
I still remember the images too. I mean, beautiful, sometimes grotesque images. And I wondered if you were hanging with people and sort of getting to know people's faces. And did you go out there and just kind of observe people?
Yeah, man. Those years during that whole time period when we used to hang out now, that time period, I would just wander around the streets like all the time and draw and just hang out at cafes and then just walk around. And I would just spend a lot of time just walking because I didn't even drive for 15 years out there. I would just walk everywhere and take the BART every time and take the 14 and just walk, you know what I mean? So I would just spend a lot of time like just walking around and being outside.
Yes. And you're not missing anything that way.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. That's one thing I miss about. I miss San Francisco and I miss Mission Street. I miss like you take that little walk. You just take if you want all the entertainment and fuel and inspiration, take a little walk, and you'll see like a million things. You know.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, San Francisco misses you, and I think you've blazed a shape in San Francisco, and so anytime you want to step back into it, I'm sure you'll be welcomed.
Cool, thanks, man. I'm trying to plan, once I get organized, I'm going to plan like a yearly trip. I go out there and tattoo at Belmont, and then do jam sessions at Paul's downtown and at Jose's house, and like say what's up to everyone and do a little comic jam session.
Yes.
So I want to do like a routine like every year, like at a certain time, you know. And I'll hit you up for sure.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, man.
I remember one time, I don't know why this was, but it was like you were just fresh back from, I want to say, Phoenix.
Okay.
And we were riding in a car, and you said, man, I'm getting on this tattoo hype. And you were wearing shorts, and you went, check it out. And you had lit up your legs practicing on yourself.
Yeah.
And you said, I did my brother too. Was that kind of how you got your first human subjects, was on you and your brother?
With tattooing? Yeah, pretty much the way my journey into tattooing was I was obsessed with it since a little kid. Like 5 years old, I saw I've talked about this before, but I always remember it because my dad was in the Navy summer range, and in Navy housing we would hang out, and then my dad's friend, he goes, check this out, and he had a tattoo of Popeye the Sailor Man on his arm, with a cigarette burn in the middle of it from playing that game, like whoever pulls away first is a pussy, you know, like that thing. Yeah. And so I was like, as I was 5 years old and I saw it and I go, that was the coolest thing ever. Like that was the best. I just was obsessed with tattoos instantly right when I saw it. And that's it. And so, you know, years later, I didn't do it before. A lot of people do it underage, get tattooed, like in the neighborhood and stuff. But I just waited, you know what I mean, until I was 18. Right when I turned 18, boom, I'm there, take my $100, you know what I'm saying, or whatever I had, like, oh, and then be like, what can I get? Can I get this thing? You know what I mean? Like, right when I was turning 18, and the guy, Twisted Tim in Phoenix, Hierarchy Tattoo, it's gone now, but on the way to the skate park, got my first one, this little skateboard sword.
Let's see it.
It's right there. I drew it, and I drew way too much detail on it, but he did a great job. And that broke me in.
That's a whole scene there.
Yeah, that was the first one. So it was all blank, and it was just that little one right in the middle. And I was like so stoked, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then I was obsessed from that moment. The next week, I had like 2 more, you know what I mean? I just was on it, boom, boom, and like, wow. So I did. From that moment, I got obsessed with it. But as a teenager or whatever, you don't have that much money, so I was like, I would scrounge to get it. The minimum was $100 back then too. It still is $100, which is crazy, but back then it was pretty much $100. I would scrounge together $100, and I would be like, what can I get? You know what I mean? Can I get this? Like I would bring a drawing or whatever, and they would be like, and I would go to like different shops, random shops. I didn't do my research that good, but I would go to Ace and Hierarchy and all that stuff, and then that's when I was obsessed with it. So anytime I got money, that was what I'm doing with it, and that's how I collected them slowly, little at a time, right? And then years later, in the Bay Area, Bay Area is a tattoo mecca, and it's been a tattoo mecca for like 100 years. It's been like that, and it still is.
Is that because it's a maritime place? Yeah,
the ports and everything, and the water brought it, and then it's such an epic city and so condensed. It was always one of those places, and so over the years, it became. Many years, San Francisco was the #1 place in the world for tattooing. You know what I mean? And so I just happened to be there. I didn't go there because of that. I went there for art, but I happened to be there in the Bay Area, and then I was like, I fell into it. You know what I mean? Like I didn't really want to be a tattooer. I wasn't like always like I was obsessed with getting tattoos. You know what I mean? And then slowly, as a teenager, I would start drawing people's tattoos for them, and then drawing them, you know what I mean, and they get tattooed and stuff like that, and it kept leading into it. And then I just got obsessed, and I wanted to get more and more tattoos, and it just ended up, I just had an epiphany one day, and I was like, why am I holding out on this thing that I've been obsessed with, and people have been asking me why, all these things, and I was like, what? It just clicked in my head, like, what? And so I went to the shop that I was getting tattooed at and spending all my money at anyways, and I asked the guy, I just showed up, I was like, pretty much in my mind, I was like, I'm not leaving, I'm just gonna come and hang out here every single day. And then
was that Devil Child?
Yeah. So that was DC Tattoo, and Devil's Child is like their secret name to it.
Okay.
And I went there, and then the guy, his name was Jason Harless, he was the guy that taught me tattooing. I never held tattoo machine. I never held a tattoo machine in my life until that moment. And like there was guys in Oakland, he passed away, Eddie, this underground comic guy. Weeks before that, he's like, hey, tap my wife with this rotary. Like, you know, he was like a train hopper character. And I was like, nah, I'm about to be in an apprenticeship. I'm not going to do it. And he's like, don't let him hold you back. Just come on over. I have everything. And I was like, no, I'm going to do it right, you know? So I just did it. It actually worked out good because the guy, Jason, was a really high quality businessman and great tattooer and artist, and it was all legit. And then I just took it super serious and did an apprenticeship with him. So he accepted me. And yeah, and then it just went from there, you know? But yeah, that was the beginning of it right there. Is like getting into it. So that's how it went down as far as starting.
And from my outside perspective, it makes sense that you would have got into tattoo because I feel like you're a great collaborator and you're great at making custom work for people. And you've done a lot of that for me, where I've come to you with an idea and you've realized it in a way that surprised and delighted me and worked perfectly for, you know, my vinyl album cover and for a great many stickers and posters around that.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And so that is like having your client come in for tattoo work. It's going to be super meaningful and important to them. You need to be a great listener and kind of serious and grounded. And so it makes sense that you would have stepped into that.
Thanks, bud. Yeah, it was an organic process, but tattooing though is like, there's many elements to it. It's the hardest, out of any medium I ever tried, it's the hardest medium. And there's many elements because it's not just, with comics, I'm used to hiding out in my little room in the middle of the night and drawing by yourself, which is a whole different thing. You know what I'm saying? If you think about it, it's like a guy holed up in the night by himself with, you know, drawing on the paper and just in silence or with music or, you know what I mean? And that's a whole different thing than tattooing. And that's what, there was so many elements of tattooing that are different, that are not even just the art element. And there's like human element, the business element, the element of like, it's a commercial commission, you know what I mean? Like all these, the spiritual element of like marking a human, you know, I take it all very serious, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, there's so many elements to it that I take it very serious, and I'm not, every tattooer is different, and I'm very slow, very tedious. I'm a slow type of situation. And so I'm into custom. I'm into taking the time, thinking about it, going slow, doing every part of the process very carefully. And that's how I think it, for me, that's how I like it and how it should be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that was my experience of getting a tattoo from you, is that you took your time, and then after the tattoo is done, there was a moment, ceremony. It's a big deal, you know, and I don't take it lightly, and you know, you have to take tattooing as a big deal. You know what I mean? To me, it's like it is a big deal. So I've always loved it, and as years went by, and my tattooing career had different time periods. You know what I mean? Different places, different times. But I always keep that, you know, in my mind of what I view it as, and I stay inspired and happy and stoked on it and love it by just focusing on the parts of it that I like, you know what I mean, and stuff like that, and the parts of it that get me stoked, you know what I mean, like there's elements to it that get me so hyped up that's what I focus on. Like if there's parts of it, and just like anything, just like comics or art, the fine art world, or tattooing or any of that, you can like kill it for yourself if you want, by just looking over at here and just seeing like the things that you don't like about it. But instead I just put like the horse blinders and be like, this is the thing I love about it, and I'm going to create this environment of like my favorite things, you know what I mean? So that's my method to it, you know? That's inspiring. I should function more that way. And it also seems like
you're doing great, man.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I can't stop. I keep thinking about this.
Exactly.
It's a compulsion.
Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I think there's some Brandon Loberg poem where he talks about poetry being an affliction, and if it's not, you shouldn't do it. And everybody who's at the circle always chimes in with the punchline. You know, those poems.
Yeah, and he knows exactly what he knows exactly that same feeling, but just through his writing and his performing, you know?
Yeah.
Same feeling, that same feeling of like, he is obsessed with what inspires him and keeps it. That's the direction I'm taking and just going with it, you know?
Right. Even as the Bay Area changes at lightning speed,
Yeah.
you know, you could get wrapped up and bitter in how the Bay has changed,
Yeah.
or you could focus on your scene,
Yeah.
who is very vital and still doing it.
Exactly, like just focus on the positive and focus on what you're doing. Don't worry about, you know, with anything, there's people that are doing something, you know, all kinds of things in the world, especially with the internet, you know what I mean? I'm not big on, you know, I like old school things and I like hand done things and different process, but with the internet, it's like a reality portal that it's like and you stick your head in and it's like a never ending ocean. And it's like, just because that ocean's there doesn't mean you need to be part of all that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you're not supposed to know all that. You know, you're not supposed to see all that. So sometimes less is more, you know, with that element. Focusing, you know.
It seems like also that when tattoo came into your life, that you were also getting ready to be a family man. Do you feel like tattoo has been a good piece of the puzzle in your life overall, once you stepped into being a provider and like it allowed you to keep being an artist?
Yeah, so as far as that, yep, I got married. I started tattooing the same year I got married, pretty much. And actually, thanks to my wife, like, she made it even possible in the first place, because when you're first starting tattooing, you make no money, zero money, and you do an apprenticeship, which is like 40 hours a week for no money. So how's that gonna work? You know what I'm saying? Most people, that's why most apprentices, it's the best way to do it, but it's like most people crumble. You know what I mean? I've seen people crumble in that situation many, many times, because it's super hard. You know what I mean? Who could pull that off? You know what I mean? Luckily, she made it possible for me to quit my job, squeeze through, do that. But I was like saving my bus tickets, taping them together, getting 1 cup of coffee, saving the cup, refilling it, you know, hanging out at a cafe all day, not spending a dime, and just focusing on that. So I wasn't, you know what I mean? So, and even with doing all that, it was super hard, and I made it through it, you know what I mean? It was worth it. But it's like, yeah, tattooing, the thing is with tattooing, which is amazing, I'm super blessed to even be doing it, and I'm so happy with it, that you, as an artist, we all know art is hard to make a living and hard to survive off your art, and that's why you work normal jobs. I worked like warehouses, unloading semi trucks, this and that, you know what I mean? Like all kinds of jobs, you know what I mean? And tattooing is so of a blessing that, like, you know, different 100 years has different things that you can actually survive off of, which is like doing my underground comics, like that. There's nothing to do with money, you know what I'm saying? I like lose money putting those out a lot of times. Like, I'll just do it for the love, you know what I mean? And I'll keep doing it, you know what I'm saying? And I don't care. But with tattooing, it's like, wow, actually, you know, I mean, it's a struggle. You're still an artist, but it's like you can actually, wow, put a lot of work, stay up all night, do a drawing for a tattoo, do a tattoo, and actually get paid to do a piece of art on someone's skin. And it stays on forever, and you actually can have money in return. So that's a win-win.
Yes.
In my world, you know what I'm saying? It's like amazing. So you actually, you know what I mean? Because I love art, and I'm never going to stop drawing and doing art, period, ever. And then out of all the different arts I've done, with tattooing, I'm so blessed that, like, you actually can do something and then you get paid for it. You know what I mean?
Yes. And it hasn't yet been harmed by the internet and phones. You can't illegally download a tattoo yet.
Yeah, it's right now. I mean, I'm not gonna like. There's so much talk about tattooing as far as like how it went, and all the old school dudes. A lot of them are like super. They can either be stoked or bitter how it went, and it's evolving crazy because of the internet, because of Instagram, and all that stuff. And millions. It's oversaturated. Millions of tattooers, young, you know. But it's always gonna grow, and it's not going anywhere. Tattooing's been around since the beginning of man, like cavemen, like they figured out how to mark themselves, you know what I mean? And it's like that, it's the big picture is, humans, as long as humans are on the planet, they'll mark designs on their skin. You know, they figured it out. Like I always say, aliens looking down, and it, like all of a sudden they're looking down at the little ants, humans, and then all of a sudden they're like, look, that ant, they made a design on themselves, and it stayed, and it's like that is amazing. Like yeah, exactly. And that's just amazing. Like that's to me the essence of tattooing. It's like holy shit, like they just learned how to make a drawing on themselves. Like that was a moment, you know what I mean? Like that is a moment, and it's amazing, you know. And that's why it will never leave unless humans are gone or living creatures, because that element is bigger than any like, you know, materialism or like human need or whatever, you know.
Right. And it does seem like the audience of people who want to have ink on their bodies has grown in the last 20 years.
Yeah. But it's gone, you know, through hundreds of years of tattooing and, you know, different time periods, different countries and different cultures and all this stuff. It's been, people don't realize that it went in all these different ways throughout, like, you know, thousands of years. There was times of like people obsessed with tattoos like so long ago, and like different time periods that people, the whole generations are gone, and they don't realize that, like, you know, back in the day it was huge, and then back in the day it was, in certain times it died, and in certain times it was big, and it's always been like that, you know. Old black and white photos you'll find of tattooed ladies that were like, you know, obsessed with it, you know what I'm saying? Like it was huge, and it was like, you know, royalty obsessed with it. You know, there was all kinds of time periods, you know.
And I love that you're seeing it on a longer time scale.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of inoculates you to the boom and bust of the Instagram age.
Yeah, and right now we are in a renaissance of many things because of the internet bringing everyone together. It hooks everyone together, so then people are growing mentally and physically with their skill set like times 100, because they're seeing it's possible. When a human sees something else is possible, they're like, oh, it's possible. You can fly, and then everyone can fly. You know what I mean? So that's what the internet does. It so it makes it hyperspeed, because then you're like, oh, now that but it also can discourage someone from even starting because they're stressed. There's like a little kid that's 6 years old doing it better than you. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's like, but you can't let that discourage you. But in general, it makes everyone grow and get better faster, which that's a great thing. You know what I mean? As far as that, you know, but you can't get overwhelmed by it. That's why it's dangerous sticking your head in that internet world, because it's you know, I love, like when I was a little kid, my grandma, she was you know, like she brought a lot of that, like things from Ireland kind of like back with her growing up, that her grandmom taught her and stuff. And I just remember like she would save every little thing, and like we would spend all day like looking at one little book. You know what I'm saying? Just one thing. You know what I mean? It's the complete opposite of what it is now. Like we would just like be like, today we're going to draw or look at this book, this one book, and you memorized it. You knew every inch of it. You knew everything about it, and you would just spend hours and hours and hours in silence doing a thing. And that is what I always try to chase, that thing, you know. So when I was a little kid, that I chased that feeling, and I like that feeling, because more isn't always better. I like that feeling of like, I got this book or this movie or anything like that, or this piece of art, and you know it's so good in and out, you're one with it. Instead of like, if you got a million things, or you're looking on the internet and a million things, all of it's just a shallow skimming the water, you know what I'm saying, compared to like diving in deep to something. So I'm really into that, you know.
Right on. Immersion.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to immersing myself in the latest issue of Tat Rat here.
Oh man, thanks, brother. That took a couple years to make, so you'll have fun. There's a lot of material in it.
And now with your comic work, is it harder to find time to do that?
With the comics?
Yeah.
Yeah, well now, as far as my lifestyle and everything that, you know, evolved, now it's like, it's hard. I mean, there's a lot more responsibilities and like bills and stuff like that since I moved out here, because in SF we were like, you know, it's like me and my wife and two little guys in like a 1-bedroom apartment that you saw packed full in the middle of the city at an intersection. And like to go outside to the park every day that I brought them, you know, you lug down strollers and you know what I mean? So my whole life has changed out here, have more room for them to run around. But with that and the bills and having a car for the first time, you know what I mean? But with all that comes, you know, yeah, you got to make money. You don't have as much time. You know what I mean? So what I do is, and you get older. I used to stay up to 4 a.m. every night, drawing like every night. I would make whole French presses of coffee at midnight. Like I would be like out of control. You know what I mean? And then waking up at 7 a.m. and stuff like that. Like, you know, being up until 4. You know, I mean, crazy things. And then as you get older, you can't do. You know what I mean? Your eyes will just blur over. You know, so. I'm a way more of a healthy routine nowadays, but like at night, like for the right now, I'm like just focusing 100% on tattooing right now and just getting established out here. And I have to build up my clients all back up and stuff like that because it's a whole new state, a whole new city. And then, but like at night, I'll do the comics, and I have like right now I'm working on like I have like 2 comic books of my own that are almost done, and then I got like 3 different commissions. I got 1 commission, bigger commission, and then I got 2 ones for zines and other people's publications. So I always have like multiple things going, and you know, under the fire or whatever, and then just chip away on them. But my style is so tedious and slow, like a snail, which I like it. That's how I like it, you know. I like this doing it like that, and it's worth it. But it makes like each project take a long time. Sometimes my wife walks in and sees his drawing, and I just like this one I'm working on right now, this dragon, full back tattoo one. It's a dragon fighting a wizard thing, and I've been working on it for like weeks and weeks, maybe months or whatever. And then like I do sketch, and I do this, and then I transfer it to the finished board, and then I redraw it again, and then I outline it, and she sees it like slowly evolving. Another day, I finally outlined the whole thing with ink, and she comes in, and I've been working on this thing for like a month or whatever. And she comes in and is like, and then she saw me at night shading like a little corner. And she goes, "What is going on? What are you doing now?" And I go, "Oh, I have to shade the whole thing now. That was just the line work." And she's like, you know, it's just, I'll never forget this one time. I did this, it was for a magazine. Is this art? It's like a comic, artsy comic, like fine art comic magazine thing. Anyways, I did this piece of a cockroach on the couch, and I was in Chicago at her dad's house, and I was drawing it, and I was working on it for like she came in, and I was like rendering the cockroach's belly, and then like 2 days later, she came back 2 nights later and looked, and I'm like down the cockroach's belly. And like it is like some people just look at it like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like you're out of control." Like, but guess what though? Some people don't understand it, and they don't care or whatever. But there's no way to get to that point to make it look like that without doing that.
Yes.
There's no shortcut. Like some people might not know the difference. Like, oh, I did this one in 20 minutes and this one in 3 weeks. Some people, general public or something, might be like, "Oh, I like this one better," or they could like the sloppy, fast one better, which is fine. But there's no way to get that look that I'm chasing any other way. There's only one way there.
Yes.
And even if 90% of the people don't care or don't notice or whatever, I care, you know what I'm saying? And I'm doing it. So that's the end of that, you know? But, you know.
It means also for the viewer who encounters your art, they can spend as long as they want looking at it, and the art will keep revealing new things. It rewards repeat viewing and long and deep viewing. So it's like it's there. It'll meet you with richness if you can spend some time with it.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I love that because when I was a kid, like Richard Scarry books or Where's Waldo books and things that you can look at and find new stuff. And like when I was a teenager, listening to Wu-Tang, I was obsessed with.
Yes.
Like I would find all of a sudden hidden little things in there after like listening to it for years, and then you hear the little thing and you're like, "Oh snap, it took me this many years to even listen to that song forever." And all those type of books and illustrations and art, that's my favorite stuff. So I love that. And I understand it's not everyone's cup of tea. You know what I mean? Like this stuff, it's like you know, that's totally understand. It's a very distinct taste for certain people, just like, you know, whatever, you know, and I get it, like, oh, that's overwhelming. Like, you give someone, and they're just like, woo. Mm. And it's totally cool, though. I just want to do it, you know?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of your more intense illustrations, they strike me as being very honest, because a lot of people spend time covering over what's really going on inside of them, and they come up with like a acceptable, pleasant face for the world. And when I meet an artist who's like, actually, there's all kinds of stuff going on inside of me, and some of it's kind of turbulent and gnarly, and here I made it beautiful into this thing, I think that's risk-taking for a visual artist or a lyricist or an actor, anybody, to like admit that they have some volcanic, heavy shit and put it in there and alchemize it into something that's maybe funny, or maybe has empathy, or maybe it's deep, but it's also gnarly and violent. Yeah. You know? And especially in the Bay Area, I think people have really learned how to tune up their appearances and like seem to be moral, seem to be up with the times, you know, do all of that. And so for an artist to be right in the middle of that, like you were, and do something that's outside of the moral fashion, was, I think a lot of us appreciated you doing that. You know, to kind of like break this thing where everybody has to appear to march in step with the same morality.
Thanks, brother. Yeah. Yeah, that's something that I can't. Yeah, I definitely can't just like conform or lie about stuff, you know what I mean? Like, especially with my art, you know? Like, you have to do it, like, if you work at, like, some corporation, you gotta, like, yes, sir, you know what I mean? Like, you gotta play that role, which is, like, a little robot role, and then, you know what I mean? Like, you're, like, you know, like, working retail or something, and, like, the boss will be like, I told you to say, how you doing, sir? May I help you with anything? Mm-hmm. And then you're like, I just told him that. I already said it to that person. They're like, I don't care, say it again to him. And I'm like, they'll think I'm a weirdo, you know what I mean? Hello, sir, can I help you with it? And I was like, they're like, I want to hear you say it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I seriously just told them that, the same person. You want me to say it again? You know what I mean? And so that's like, you know, like doing all that, like, you know what I mean? Like, I've done that, and you have to do that in life to survive sometimes, and like cut through things and like get out of the situation. You got to like dodge things and like play games and like
read the script
and just, you know how to do all that. But when it comes to art, that's the last thing in the world you should be doing. You should just be saying what you want to do, you know what I mean?
Amen, Cameron Forsley. Right on.